Coming up on this Wednesday edition of Newsline at noon, the National Assembly passes next year's government budget worth some $336 billion before the deadline for the first time in 12 years. North Korea defies a UN resolution aimed at ending the country's human rights abuses, saying such a move will only accelerate its nuclear program. Plus, U.S. President Barack Obama has reportedly chosen Ashton Carter, the Pentagon's former second-in-command, as his next defense secretary to replace Chuck Hagel. These stories and more on Newsline at noon. It's noon Wednesday, December 3rd here in Korea. Thanks for tuning in. Live from Seoul, I'm Eoh Jin-joo.
It's very good to have you with us. I'm Mark Broome. Our top story this afternoon. Korea's rival parties have passed next year's almost $340 billion budget bill, meeting the constitutional deadline for the first time in 12 years.
Our Kim Young-gil will break down the government's spending priorities for 2015 in this next report.
It hasn't happened in 12 years, but on Tuesday, the National Assembly passed next year's government budget bill before the deadline set by the Constitution. The passage is of great significance as Parliament was able to avoid the tiresome tug-of-war scenarios we've seen in the recent past. This year, the timeline was helped by new pressure. Under the revised National Assembly Act, if lawmakers didn't meet the deadline, the government's draft version of the budget bill would have passed automatically.
Among the 273 lawmakers present, 225 were in favor, 28 against, and 20 abstained. The 2015 budget bill is passed.
Here's what's inside the 2015 budget. The government has allocated $103 billion for welfare, $48 billion for education, $39 billion for R&D and social overhead capital, $34 billion for defense, $15 billion for safety, $4.1 billion for foreign affairs and unification, and the rest for the other social costs. A large portion was allocated to welfare and education spending to better help the elderly and to provide free childcare programs for preschoolers. Next year's budget is 5.5% or $17.6 billion higher than this year's. Apart from the revised budget bill, the two parties also passed tax-related bills. They hiked the price of cigarettes by almost $2 a pack in a bid to reducing smoking rates and to make up for tax revenue shortfalls. And in a move to boost the domestic economy, Korean companies will be given tax breaks if they increase investments, wages, and dividend payments. Although the budget bill was passed, it is expected that the two parties will open an extraordinary session after the current parliamentary session ends on December 9th to continue discussing thousands of pending bills that still await parliamentary approval. Kim Young-gil, Arirang News.
And it wasn't just the budget bill and other tax-related bills that passed the plenary session yesterday. Two free trade agreements with Australia and Canada have been ratified as well. The KoreaAustralia FTA has been awaiting parliamentary ratification for several weeks since the bill was submitted to the National Assembly in mid-September. Now, the passage should quell government and related industries' concerns that further delays to its ratification could damage exports. There were worries that Korean exporters could start losing ground to their Japanese rivals because the Japan-Australia FTA was approved by Tokyo's upper house of parliament early last month. And North Korea has made its stance clear it would not, under any terms, accept a UN resolution that seeks to refer the North Korean leadership to The Hague, and it will have to make its own choices to confront international policies against the regime. And with passage of that resolution unlikely due to resistance from China and Russia, South Korea and the U.S. are among those looking into taking a different tack. Park Ji-won tells us more.
In a letter to UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, North Korea's ambassador to the United Nations says Pyongyang cannot and will not accept the adoption of a resolution that takes aim at North Korea's human rights violations. Ambassador Cha Sung-nam writes that the European Union and Japan, who introduced the draft resolution last month, as well as the United States, had chosen a path of confrontation and that North Korea had no choice but to strengthen its war deterrence. That, a North Korean Foreign Ministry statement says, could include another nuclear test. Meanwhile, in a move that aims to keep pressure on Pyongyang and global attention focused on the matter, a group of countries, led by South Korea and the U.S., are pushing to put the North Korean human rights issue on the agenda for the UN Security Council before the year is up. 9 of the 15 members of the Security Council would need to vote in favor for the agenda to be set. Permanent members, such as China and Russia, cannot wield their veto power when it comes to agenda setting. There's a sense of urgency for setting the agenda, since half of the 10 non-permanent members currently on the council, including South Korea, will see their 2-year terms end by the end of this month. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
U.S. President Barack Obama appears to have found his next defense chief. No official announcement has been made, but Ashton Carter is at the top of the list to replace Chuck Hagel. Carter, during a visit to Seoul last year, said that Washington's budget cuts in defense would not have an impact on the priority it's placed on the Asia-Pacific region or the Korea-U.S. alliance. Shin Se-min reports.
Ashton Carter looks poised to become the next U.S. Secretary of Defense, replacing Chuck Hagel, who stepped down last week. Barring any unexpected setbacks, President Barack Obama is widely expected to tap the former Deputy Defense Secretary for the post. Carter would be coming into his position with a long background in defense matters. He has served as a Deputy Secretary of Defense under Leon Panetta and Chuck Hagel, and as the Undersecretary for Acquisition Technology and Logistics, where he was the Pentagon's chief buyer of weapons and manages arsenals. Carter, a Rhodes Scholar, is widely known for his experience in managing budgets and weapons contracts. His range of experiences is being touted with the multiple crises presenting themselves in the Middle East, namely the threat posed by the Islamic State. If and when Carter is officially nominated as defense chief, he'll face a confirmation process, likely under the Republican-led Senate early next year. But he's expected to pass through thanks to his past experience at the Pentagon and the fact that he has a respect of many senior military leaders. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
The nominee to take over the top U.S. military post in the Asia-Pacific region has labelled North Korea the most dangerous threat facing the United States. Connie Kim reports.
The Pentagon's nominee to lead the U.S. Pacific Command has stressed that the security of the Korean Peninsula will remain one of Washington's top priorities under his stewardship. At his Senate confirmation hearing on Tuesday local time, Admiral Harry Harris said North Korea is the most volatile and dangerous threat facing the U.S. as it continues to try and develop its nuclear weapons and the means to deliver them across continents. Although neither have been flight tested yet, it's believed Pyongyang's Taepodong-2 long-range rocket and its KN-08 ballistic missile could potentially reach the continental U.S. The admiral vowed to maintain a forward-deployed U.S. military presence in the West Pacific to deter North Korean aggression. And if all efforts fail, the Pentagon nominee said the U.S. military is ready to fight and defeat the North Korean military. The nominee also noted concerns over China's growing economic and military presence. Harris said China's rapid military modernization and its increasing influence on its neighbors is an enduring challenge. But the admiral did not rule out the possibility of working with China in some aspects so as to reduce the risk of a military misjudgment, which could threaten peace. If confirmed by the Senate, Harris will replace Admiral Samuel Locklear. If appointed, Admiral Harris will take a key role in the Obama administration's pivot to Asia at a time when North Korea and China's rising military power are considered the most dangerous threats to the region. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
No, it's been making headlines around the world. Many are wondering just who was behind the cyber attack that targeted Sony Pictures last week, leaking at least 4 previously unreleased movies online in the process. Now, North Korea is being seen as the most obvious answer, considering its well-publicized anger over a Sony Pictures comedy that centers around a plot to kill North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. And the clues, in fact, are starting to back that up, that assumption of guilt against North Korea, backing it up. Our Gwon-soa reports.
More clues point to North Korea being the culprit of the recent cyber attack on Sony Pictures. According to Bloomberg, 2 people they say are credible but not authorized to speak in public said the destructive malware found in Sony's internal system last week contained Korean language code. Other elements found were similar to major attacks on the networks of South Korean banks and TV stations last year, which were blamed on the North.
There are parts of this attack and patterns of this attack that look like things North Korea may have done in the past.
Others are skeptical.
People are initially jumping to the conclusion that because it's coded in Korean, that this might be a North Korea waged attack against Sony in particular or other organizations. We have to be very careful of jumping to those conclusions and automatically assuming attribution in this case.
The FBI, which is investigating the case, has not commented on who they think is behind the cyber attack, but has said that the method of attack had only been seen in Asia and the Middle East up until now. Most eyes are on North Korea, though, as the interview, which centers on a CIA plot to assassinate leader Kim Jong-un, is due to hit screens on Christmas Day. The regime has called the comedy an act of terrorism and vowed merciless retaliation. Gwon-soa, Arirang News.
President Park Geun-hye, who launched a committee earlier this year to better prepare for the costly process of unifying the 2 Koreas at some point down the line, has been checking up on the progress being made so far. Meeting with the committee on Tuesday, she said that a lot more needs to be done to improve the dire human rights situation in the north. Choi Yu-sun reports.
President Park Geun-hye says North Korea's human rights situation must improve for the future of a unified Korea. Meeting with a unification preparatory committee for the 3rd time since it launched this year, President Park emphasized how important it was for the North Korean people to maintain their physical and mental health in achieving a happy and successful unification of the 2 Koreas. While Pyongyang's repeated provocations and nuclear ambitions have kept the 2 sides from renewing dialogue, Seoul has made attempts to improve ties through non-political cooperation and launched a committee to better prepare for unification. Referring to the upcoming 70th anniversary of Korea's liberation from Japanese colonial rule and the division of the 2 Koreas, President Park said it's an important time to move toward developing inter-Korean ties and bringing out meaningful change from North Korea. She then asked the committee members to appeal to South Koreans and the international community about the urgent need to unite the 2 Koreas. The committee, for its part, said it will hold a hearing early next year to establish a charter on unification. It then laid out plans for the coming year, from developing a manual on a unified Korea's economic system to encouraging the North to participate in President Park's peace initiative in Northeast Asia. Comparing unification preparation to Koreans' use of various ingredients and paste to spice up dishes, President Park urged participants at Tuesday's meeting to approach unification with patience, as it can only be achieved successfully when all the hearts and minds of Koreans come together. Choi Yu-sun, Arirang News.
And we have some news just coming in. 2 bodies have been recovered from the site where a Korean-operated trawler sank off Russia's eastern coast on Monday. The operator of the vessel, Sajo Industries, says Russian boats brought the 2 bodies to the surface early this Wednesday morning. Now, authorities are currently in the process of trying to identify them. That pushes the official death toll now to 3, with 50 other members of the Arirang 501 fishing vessel still missing. Search and rescue operations are ongoing, but high tides and strong winds are unfortunately hampering efforts to try and find any possible survivors. The trawler was carrying 35 Indonesians, 13 Filipinos, 11 Koreans and 1 Russian when it went down.
Stay up to date on the latest news out of Korea. Connecting to our team of reporters about the issues that matter to Korea. On air, on your mobile, online. Find out more about Korea on Newsline at noon with Mark Broome and Eoh Jin-joo.
I'm Eoh Jin-joo.
Market researcher, strategy analytics, said Thursday that LG Electronics brought in about...
Korea's foreign exchange reserves dropped for the 4th month in a row in November, marking the longest downward streak since the 2008 global financial crisis. The Bank of Korea says the country's foreign currency reserves amounted to slightly over $363 billion as of the end of last month, down $630 million from a month earlier. The central bank attributes the drop to the weakening euro and British pound that led to a fall in the dollar conversion value of those currencies. Now, back in 2008, during the global financial crisis, massive capital outflows prompted the decline. And Korea's 10 largest corporate groups have been having a tough time of late, with most of them reporting less than impressive earnings so far this year on worsening external risks. This has been reflected in their share prices, with most of them sliding. Despite this, analysts say clearer skies could be on the horizon. Kim Ji-an reports.
External factors, including the strengthening of the Korean currency and increased competition from China, have taken a toll on corporate earnings. Excluding CJ and SK Group, which grew about 22% and 13% respectively in terms of market capitalization, Korea's top 10 corporate groups are feeling the heat as their share prices have tumbled so far this year. Among them, shares in Hyundai Heavy Industries have dropped the most by nearly 53%. Shares of Samsung Group also fell by nearly 4% this year. It's a similar story for other 488 listed companies, as their combined net profit fell nearly 13% during the January to September period, from the same period last year to around $45.5 billion.
The company's worsening earnings are being reflected in their stock prices. They are heavily influenced by external risks, including the slow recovery in Europe, China, and other emerging markets.
But the analyst projects Korean shares will likely pick up next year as external conditions improve following economic recoveries in many major global markets. Daishin Securities predicts Korea's main benchmark Kospi will hit 2,250 at some point from the upper 1,900 level. Goldman Sachs also forecasts the Kospi to top the 2,300 level next year, which would be an all-time high. Kim Ji-an, Arirang News.
Now, it looks as though Korean conglomerates are bracing themselves for a long-term recession as they've been slashing their investment in facilities but boosting spending on R&D as they search for potential areas of future growth. Management evaluation firm CEO Score says Korea's top 30 conglomerate groups reduced their facilities investment by 10% in the third quarter from a year earlier to nearly $60 billion, but raised R&D investment by 6% to $24 billion. Samsung Electronics was the country's top investor in both sectors. It accounted for more than a quarter of the total amount of investment among the conglomerates surveyed. Korea's largest steelmaker POSCO slashed its facilities investment by nearly 50%. Falling oil prices may be welcome news for all us drivers out there, but it is setting off alarm bells among Korean builders. Slowing demand for petrochemical plants in cash-rich Middle Eastern countries is spelling trouble for them. Our Hwang Jie has the details.
Korean construction companies are not likely to achieve the $70 billion goal set by the government for them to win orders abroad this year. That's largely due to tumbling oil prices, which prompted Middle East oil producers to delay their petrochemical and infrastructure projects. With less than 1 month to go, Korean companies have won less than $60 billion worth of orders so far this year.
Government officials say with too many variables in the market, local companies could run into problems in winning major deals for the remainder of the year. The suspension this year of a water management project in Thailand also make it difficult for the country to meet the goal. The project involves Seoul's state-run Korea Water Resources Corporation. Industry officials say Korean companies will face an even more difficult year in 2015. That's because there's no sign global oil prices, which have lost 40% from the peak in June, will rebound anytime soon. They say Korean companies are relying too heavily on the Middle East for their overseas construction contracts, although they're trying to diversify their markets. The Korean government is also making efforts to help them find markets elsewhere. Hwang Ji-hye, Arirang News.
Time now for a look through some more global headlines we're following this hour. For that, we turn to Eunice Kim, standing by at the News Centre.
Eunice, another horrific attack by Islamist militant group Alshabab that murdered dozens of people is putting intense pressure on the Kenyan government.
Indeed, it is, Jin-joo. This is not the first deadly assault Kenya has seen at the hands of the Somali-based terror group, and the pressure mounted enough to lead to a reshuffle of Kenya's security chiefs. Now, the video shows the aftermath of the latest Al-Shabaab attack. 36 bodies discovered in a quarry in a village near the Somali border, at least 2 of them beheaded, most of them shot. Reports say the militants struck around 1 a.m. Tuesday, awakening the workers from their slumber and separating to kill the non-Muslims from the Muslims. The group's spokesman said it was retaliation for the Kenyan government's raid on a mosque last month. Feeling the squeeze, Kenya's President Uhuru Kenyatta renewed his commitment to win the war against Al-Shabaab that has been waged since 2011, while also accepting his police chief's resignation and firing his interior minister. The area, about 15 kilometers away from the town of Mandera, had seen another terror strike last month when Al-Shabaab militants hijacked a bus and killed 28 passengers on board. And crossing north to Lebanon, security forces there say they have detained a wife and a child of Islamic State group's leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, who you see there. Some U.S. officials say she is an ex-wife, identified as Saja al-Dulaimi, an Iraqi like Baghdadi. Some have described her as a powerful figure within the Islamic State group. Officials in Lebanon say she and a child were picked up some 10 days ago when they tried to enter the country from Syria with forged papers. A DNA test is being conducted to confirm the child is Baghdadi's. A local paper called their arrest a valuable catch and that it was a result of a planned operation coordinated with foreign intelligence services. Little is known about the leader of IS. Reports say he could have as many as 3 wives. And over in France, lawmakers in its lower house of parliament have overwhelmingly approved a motion to recognize the statehood of Palestine. The results of the non-binding vote is expected to be repeated in a Senate poll later this month, raising pressure on Paris to be more proactive on the issue. President François Hollande, a supporter of Israel, has distanced himself from this vote. Similar resolutions were passed in Britain, Spain, and Ireland in recent weeks, reflecting a growing impatience in Europe over Israel's aggressive policies.
The icy roads and sidewalks and freezing temperatures are causing headaches for many of us, though temperatures are slightly higher than yesterday, but still hovering below the freezing mark here in Seoul. Now, snow clouds continue to come in from the west, so we are looking at a snow flurries in the capital area, but down Chungcheongdo and Jeollado provinces will see on and off heavy snow throughout the day, so people in those regions could see up to 15 centimeters of snow fall through tomorrow. tomorrow. Even a heavy snow advisory has been issued in those parts, so please stay safe. And as for today's readings, now the afternoon high in Seoul will hike up to right around 0, while Daegu and Gwangju peaks at 6 and 5, and Busan will top out at 9 this afternoon. And as for the other regions, Jeju Island will be getting up to 10, while Daejeon and Dokdo-si highs of 2 and 5 respectively. Well, that's all from me today. Stay warm, and back to you, Mark and Jin-joo in the studio.
Yes, very good advice. Stay warm today and stay safe if you're driving on the icy roads. And this is where we say goodbye to you on this Wednesday afternoon.
Mark and I'll be back at the same time tomorrow. Thank you for watching.